Alexander Isak is set to miss out on his Liverpool move. Alexander Isak's mistake has cost him, as Liverpool negotiations wouldn't have been a problem. It has been reported that Newcastle were open to letting one-away striker Alexander Isak leave under two conditions this summer, but those conditions were not met. Alexander Isak's costly transfer mistake has been laid bare as the striker looks set to miss out on his dream Liverpool move. Isak's future has been up in the air this summer, with the 25-year-old striker pushing to join the Premier League champions. The saga has turned toxic, with Isak initially being left out of the Magpies' pre-season tour of Asia before Liverpool's £110 million bid for him was rejected earlier this month. Following that, it was reported that the Swede had told the club he wanted to leave, which led to him training alone and being absent from Newcastle's Premier League opener against Aston Villa. On the night of the Professional Footballers Association Awards Gala, which Isak didn't attend, he released a bombshell statement saying promises have been broken and trust has been lost between the club and player. Newcastle responded with a statement of their own, voicing their disappointment, but crucially insisting that Isak would be welcomed back to the first team fold whenever he was ready to rejoin his teammates. As of yet, that does not appear to be the case. Isak was unsurprisingly not involved in Monday night's fiery Premier League clash between Newcastle and Liverpool at St. James Park, which the Reds won 3-2 in the dying seconds despite a valiant comeback from Eddie Howe's 10-man side. Isak's absence hasn't earned him any favors with his former supporters, who have labeled him greedy in chance this season. But according to a report on Sunday Supplement, the entire transfer standoff between club and player could have been avoided this summer if the forward had pursued his move differently. The report claims that Isak could have outlined his reasons for wanting to leave at the start of the summer instead of waiting until August, by which time Liverpool had already signed Newcastle's favored potential replacement, Hugo Ekitike. Publicly thanking the Magpies supporters and staff could have also gone a long way. Alexander Isak crucially did not announce his desire to leave at the start of the summer. Newcastle were supposedly open to letting him leave and looked to explore the conditions of his sale. That was firstly 2 players being brought in, and secondly an acceptable transfer fee with Liverpool being negotiated. It is felt if negotiations between Newcastle and Liverpool had happened much earlier in the summer, they wouldn't have been a problem. But the conditions of sale haven't been met, as Newcastle have not brought in 2 players, and the club will not leave themselves short with just a few days left in the summer transfer window. Newcastle had lined up several players as potential replacements in the event that Isak left, all of whom have joined rival clubs. João Pedro was one such target, with the Magpies having seen a £50 million bid turned down for the Brazilian, before Chelsea swooped in with a better offer to secure his signature. The Blues also successfully signed another of Howe's targets, Liam Delap, who preferred to join the Stamford Bridge side. Newcastle then turned their attention to Eintracht Frankfurt's Ekitike, also being pursued by Liverpool, despite their interest in Isak. Newcastle fell short in that race too, reportedly seeing a £70 million bid rejected as the Frenchman joined his preferred club in a £79 million transfer. Following that, Magpies bosses raced to sign Benjamin Sesko, making a second bid worth £69.7 million before the Slovenian chose Manchester United. On Monday night, prior to the Liverpool fixture, Newcastle Chiefs held clear-the-air talks with their one-away talisman in a last-gasp attempt to convince him to stay. According to Mail Online, Newcastle co-owner Jamie Rubin and a PIF delegation held the talks at Isak's Northumberland home in an effort to smooth things over. It is suggested that a new contract would potentially be at the heart of discussions, should Isak promise to stay. Rio Ngumoha has already made Arne Slot change his plan as new Liverpool reality clear. Rio Ngumoha was the hero for Liverpool against Newcastle in dramatic fashion. He is not so much knocking on Arne Slot's door as he is hammering it down. Rio Ngumoha of Liverpool celebrates scoring the winner against Newcastle. Arne Slot clearly loves Rio Ngumoha, but even though his manager has repeatedly sung his praises, the precocious teenager is still finding ways to surpass expectations. The 16-year-old was one of the standout stars of pre-season, but come the Bournemouth match, Ngumoha was left on the bench even as Liverpool had to dig in to salvage a late win. Tempering expectations, Slot tacitly conceded that he was reluctant to turn to someone so young to try and turn the tide. Federico Chiesa was the hero that day instead, and the Premier League opener concluded with a sense that perhaps Liverpool might still need to use the market to find a Luis Diaz replacement. Fast forward a week, and a sense persists that Liverpool may be one forward light, especially as the Alexander Isak saga drags on. But Ngumoha could not be doing any more to convince Slot that he needs a clear pathway to the first team. This time around, Slot did give him a chance to influence proceedings, albeit only in the last scraps of added time against Newcastle. At the point when Ngumoha came on, Liverpool found itself strangely under the cosh from the 10-man Magpies, and a draw was starting to look more appealing. But even before his dramatic late moment, Ngumoha turned the tide. His fearlessness on the ball got Liverpool back up the pitch, relieving some of the pressure that had been building. And then came his headline contribution, showing awareness beyond his years to arrive at the back post at the perfect time. He then produced a ridiculously cool first-time finish beyond Nick Pope to send the away fans into raptures. By leaving him out against Bournemouth, perhaps Slot was on some level trying to contain the hype, to manage expectations, but the cat is firmly out of the bag. This is a hugely exciting talent who is already at a level where he can mix it with the best. In that sense, Ngumoha is effectively forcing Slot to change the plan. What might have been earmarked as a season of very gradual exposure to the first team is now a campaign where the teenager has a case to be included week in, week out. Rio Ngumoha of Liverpool applauds the fans at full time following the team's victory in the Premier League match between Newcastle United and Liverpool at St James's Park on August 25th, 2025 in Newcastle upon Tyne, England. Calls to start would probably be a touch premature, although a few more late contributions like that will certainly attract such shouts. But at the very least, there would be a strong case to utilize Ngumoha's fresh legs off the bench more often than not. It was great that he could secure the points against Newcastle, but he would have been every bit as useful coming on at 2-0 up. Perhaps Liverpool would not have found itself so penned in if he had been there as an outlet, tying opposing fullbacks in knots and making a nuisance of himself. Hijack. He has now stood up and proved himself across a consistent run of games in preseason and shown that the impact can translate to competitive fixtures. The only thing holding Slot back from using his more would be his age. But is that a good enough reason? It's looking like a weaker and weaker case. There's no suggestion that Slot has got anything wrong up to this point. He is keenly aware that he is dealing with someone who still has a lot of physical and emotional maturing to do, and that comes with a need for added caution. But from a footballing standpoint, there can be little doubt now. Ngumoha is ready. Liverpool should scrap Alexander Isak transfer with new priority crystal clear. The Reds need to get a huge deal over the line this week, but not one that involved the Newcastle striker. Alexander Isak remains in limbo at Newcastle. 'Tis the transfer saga that won't go away. With little over a week of the summer transfer window left, Alexander Isak continues to be in exile at Newcastle as he waits for Liverpool to bid the £150 million the club wants to let him go. In the meantime, the 25-year-old is training alone and no doubt anxiously counting down to the 7 p.m. deadline on September 1st. However, it shouldn't just be the British record transfer demand putting the Premier League champions off from making their move. What's more imperative is that right now, there's another target that Liverpool should be pursuing while dropping their interest in the Swedish striker. The notion that Arne Slot needs a clinical number 9 is questionable. Last season, with Darwin Núñez confined to a bit-part role before his move to Saudi Arabia, his side stormed to the title without a central target man. The movement of Mohamed Salah, Cody Gakpo, and now Hugo Ekitike is a potent feature of Liverpool's attacking play. Isak would undoubtedly add finishing prowess, but his presence would also restrict the movement that Salah and co specialize in. Instead, Liverpool should leave the Isak deal alone and go all out for Marc Guehi. The necessity for a new center back at Anfield far outweighs the need to boost their forward power further. With just a year left on his current deal, Guehi would cost considerably less than the extortionate fee Newcastle are demanding for Isak. The ongoing saga of Ibrahima Konate's new deal, let alone the man's early season form, suggests the Reds should meet whatever Crystal Palace demands. Mark Guehi has just a year left on his Crystal Palace deal. Instead, Liverpool should leave the Isak deal alone and go all out for Mark Guehi. The necessity for a new center back at Anfield far outweighs the need to boost their forward power further. With just a year left on his current deal, Guehi would cost considerably less than the extortionate fee Newcastle are demanding for Isak. The ongoing saga of Ibrahima Konaté's new deal, let alone the Frenchman's early season form, suggests the Reds should meet whatever Crystal Palace demands. For all their potency going forward, Liverpool remain vulnerable when teams counterattack. It was a factor that Bournemouth exposed on the opening night of the season, and Paris Saint-Germain even more so in last season's Champions League clash. Liverpool will score goals with or without Alexander Isak, and yet without Guehi, Slot's side are not the clear title favorites many perceive them to be. FSG still have time to make a major statement this summer. What that statement should be is crystal clear. Man City to hijack Liverpool's key transfer target with Guardiola set to ruffle feathers. Manchester City could reportedly join the race for Crystal Palace's Mark Guehi if they offload centre-backs Manuel Akanji and Nathan Ake this week. The England defender, 25, is already on the radar of Liverpool, Tottenham, and Barcelona, with only a year left on his contract. According to the Daily Star Sunday, Guehi is being eyed as a potential £35 million target at the Etihad should Pep Guardiola lose Akanji and Ake from his squad. Galatasaray are keen on Akanji, 30, while Everton have set their sights on Ake, also 30, having already secured Jack Grealish on loan from City. If both players depart before the summer transfer window shuts next week, City's interest in Guehi could intensify, setting them on a collision course with title rivals Liverpool. Despite Guardiola looking to streamline his squad, the speedy Guehi is seen as a long-term asset. Prior to Newcastle's £35 million signing of Germany's Malek Thiaw from AC Milan, Guehi was also on their shortlist. Eddie Howe admits Alexander Isak fears as Newcastle boss threatens Liverpool. Eddie Howe has conceded that replacing Alexander Isak is a near impossible task, but he believes Anthony Gordon could be up to the challenge. The Newcastle manager would have preferred to have Isak available for tomorrow night's match against Liverpool at a packed St. James Park. In an ideal world, he would have liked to have at least one new striker in the Toon squad for the visit of the Premier League champions. Newcastle began their season with a goalless draw at Aston Villa, fueling critics who argue they lack firepower without their Swedish striker. However, if Liverpool underestimate Newcastle's scoring potential, they may be in for a shock. Howe is already seeing promising signs that Gordon can thrive through the middle. "I don't think anyone can fill Alex's boots, and Anthony will know that," said the Newcastle boss. "He's not trying to be Alex. He's got to be himself. If he'd scored at Aston Villa, you'd say, that's the perfect No-9 performance. He had 7 shots in the game, looked threatening, and got a man sent off. He was using his qualities, which are his speed and dribbling skills. Yes, we were missing a goal from the overall performance, but hopefully those will come." While Isak trains alone, Gordon has been undergoing intensive training on what it takes to be a center forward. Howe added, "It's a bit different for him. We're training him there at the moment, and he's beginning to get that rhythm that you need playing in the position and the understanding and tactical knowledge you need because the role is different. But he's an attacker and a very good attacker. The beauty of Anthony when we signed him was that he can play right, left, and potentially down the middle. It's something he has done before, and he's done it for England, so it's not totally new to him. Anthony Gordon will lead Newcastle's attack against Liverpool. The harsh reality, however, is that Gordon hasn't found the back of the net in league action since his strike against Wolves on January 19th, a 5th goal in 6 matches. His sole goal in the 17 fixtures since came against Arsenal in the Carabao Cup. So Newcastle won't possess the same attacking threat they wielded against Liverpool last season, particularly in the Cup final when Isak scored what proved to be the decisive goal. What they will boast on Monday, though, is a supremely gifted, committed professional spearheading their attack. 12 months ago, Gordon nearly joined Liverpool during a frantic weekend when Newcastle were compelled to generate millions of pounds to avoid a 10 points deduction due to PSR violations. In the end, it was homegrown talent Elliot Anderson and Yankama Minte who were sold to Nottingham Forest and Brighton respectively, with the Scouser remaining at St. James's Park. The rumors, by his own acknowledgement, impacted him, but Gordon knuckled down, dismissed any notions of a return to Merseyside, and concentrated on the club that pays his salary. If only a certain teammate could mirror his approach. Arsenal issue Alexander Isak transfer response as Liverpool saga drags on. Arsenal have been linked with a move for Newcastle striker Alexander Isak, who has handed in a transfer request, but the Gunners are said to have no interest in a deal. Arsenal previously showed an interest in signing Newcastle United striker Alexander Isak. Rumors that Arsenal could make a late bid to pip Liverpool to a blockbuster swoop for Newcastle's unsettled striker, Alexander Isak, have reportedly been flatly rejected by the club. The Gunners have been previously touted with a move for Isak, who appears restless at St. James's Park. The 26-year-old has recently attracted an approach from Liverpool, with both the player and the reigning Premier League champions understood to be enthusiastic about Isak leading their revamped frontline. Newcastle are reluctant to part with their prized striker, however, and it remains unclear whether all sides will find common ground before the transfer window closes on September 1st. Whilst many anticipate Liverpool will succeed in their chase for the Sweden international, news of Kai Havertz's injury setback earlier this week had sparked whispers in certain quarters that Arsenal might thrust themselves into the summer's most significant transfer storyline. The Independent reports that such chatter was widespread among senior officials at the PFA Awards earlier this week, on the very evening that Isak himself published a bombshell statement on social media. The publication noted, however, that Arsenal dismissed such speculation outright, responding that there was no chance of a deal materializing, reports the Mirror. They have subsequently finalized an agreement with Crystal Palace to acquire Eberechi Eze. As the summer transfer window draws to a close, the future of Alexander Isak at Newcastle remains uncertain. In a recent statement, Isak accused the club of breaking promises, stating that his relationship with the Magpies can't continue.